model split? All right, so we sort of envisioned two different models in terms of where students could begin to kind of get the initial sort of lesson portion of their introduction to STEM changing verbs. So one is sort of more of a deductive model, and obviously like the students would not see, you're in the deductive model, and the other is more of an inductive. And there's a lot of different reasons why this might fit different learning styles. One particular student might prefer one over the other. So in the deductive model, it's really sort of the classic what you would see in a book. You know, you get sort of here are the rules, here's the chart, some examples, and we did sort of imagine this like animated instructor, you know, talking them through it so that it just seems a little more engaging for the student, and maybe these things are appearing on the animated chalkboard. And then at the end, they would end with this scene where humor would be incorporated. So Chris came up with a fun idea.
Yeah, so the idea would be that maybe an exchange student is studying abroad and missed the lesson on STEM changing verbs, and so they're kind of, the student is trying to talk about what he and others are doing and doesn't have the knowledge of what the STEM changing verbs are, and so, you know, he's making mistakes with it.
Yeah, right. And so the host family is like, you mean be they or be the or whatever, and so so that kind of gets to the like buy-in for the student. Why do you need this, right? What kind of mistakes might you make that might embarrass you a little bit?
Right, especially if you do be the wrong.
Right. And the idea then is that this kind of scene comes back later in the assessment. And then so for the alternate model, again, sort of a video animated, but here they're going to really start with this scene and then come to some sort of comprehension question. So what happens, you know, it's present tense, and then maybe they can sort of come up with the rule, and then again, sort of this guided confirmation of the rule, so they can see, you know, the verb jugar, and then all of a sudden the u cambia, ue, right? So they still end with sort of this same launching point, where they've got the fundamental concept.
But
it's not a particularly
The
complicated.
order is kind of reversed, like,
Right.
and maybe the approach is a little bit different.
And that could either be instructor choice, or perhaps the students have been identified as being more successful with one model strategy over another.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we get into our practice and everybody lands again at this like sort of middle level, you know, not the lowest, not the highest, but this middle level to sort of, so they can sort of be tracked depending on their success. So we came up with just a few examples for the different activities at this kind of middle ground level, or, you know, level 2. Maybe they're doing some sort of drag and drop, drag the correct conjugation into some sort of meaningful sentence. And really something that I think our group agreed on a lot is that there has to be some sort of context and meaning throughout. So if they do go down to sort of the low level where it is more mechanical, it's still a meaningful sentence. It's not just, you know, connect with, you know, the raíz with the terminación, right? There's some sort of image or some sort of context that shows them, we're talking about jugar. Jugar means this, right? Or dormir. Dormir is, you know, this.
If we had time, I wish we could draw up the activity that she had as an example. It was very good.
Yeah.
The puzzle activity of, you know, putting it all together.
We can talk maybe really quickly about, it's pretty quick kind of thing. So for our sort of low level, the sort of more mechanical, they have a picture of, you know, mi amiga Ana, you know, playing in the park, and then they have sort of these different puzzle pieces. So one is the raíz, hu versus when, and then the terminaciones, and they have to drag them together. And we talked a bit about the kind of feedback students would receive here, right? So if they're tracked down to this sort of, the puzzle game, the sort of low-level mechanical type, it means they need a little bit more support. So say they get the nosotros sentence and they pull down jug and amos, or jueg and amos, right? It would kick out the jueg and maybe highlight nosotros, right? And so then it would sort of guide them. And after a few missed attempts, there shouldn't be too many because, you know, it's a pretty easy kind of thing, but they would get a little, remember, for nosotros forms, the stem change doesn't apply, something like that, some little guidance. And if students really kept struggling here, they could go back to a model, maybe they could try the other one, or just, do you want to see that again, that explanation again? Otherwise, they could be, you know, tracked into the middle. A little variety of modality is something we talked about, so not all written production, but maybe there's a listening activity, they select the right answer. The higher level, so they have different images, you know, let's say sleeping, playing, asking, and then they need to type in the verb, so they actually need to produce the entire conjugated present tense verb. And then maybe you could go to the assessment.
Sure, and just to be clear here, we wanted an avenue for students who were strong on it, not to get stuck in all the steps, but to kind of go right into, oh, you did really well here, let's send you to a high, and if that was too much, back them up.
Right.
So definitely adapted in that idea. So then, coming out of here, they've made it through this activity. The idea is to move into a practice for assessment. How are you doing? Kind of make sure that you're ready before you go into the final. Just as an example, here we had write a 5-sentence narrative of the pictures that are there. What's going on here, or a picture, a scene. And then we've put some instructor choice, some possible assessments, either a personal narrative, or perhaps going back to that video of the exchange student and saying, he's made these errors, how should he have said that correctly in a voice recording, to give them an opportunity to act as in that role. So, some ideas.
Any questions? Okay.